Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by an individual who stepped into the world of talent acquisition way back in 2018 and has since then enjoyed a fruitful career working for some of Germany's best companies. Her skills have extended just beyond finding the best talents that thrive in the teams. Through her highly communicative individual approach, she throws herself into anything that can give improvement to candidate experience, and this is what's led us to this discussion today. For the first time on Tea Time History, we're actually going to delve deeply into interview training, but in a way that's essentially laying out a blueprint for anyone who's listening for their own company. Having already heard some of the information that we're going to go through today, I genuinely cannot wait to uncover a little bit more about how Kasia and her team have succeeded with interview training. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, Kasia Zadlo, the Senior Talent Acquisition Partner with the team at Upvest. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great intro. It's the first time not only at your podcast, but in podcasts in general. So very excited
Very
about
nice, very nice. And I appreciate the intro. It makes it a lot easier when there's so much to write about, but also, your topic is genuinely one I'm super excited about, because I think a lot of times we get guests on here that, yes, we talk a lot about theory, we talk a lot about process and things like that, but obviously for yourself, it's really digging into nuts and bolts. And it's a topic that I think if companies can really nail down, it can drastically improve recruitment, because it's not just talking about how does the process work, but it's talking about how does everyone get better in doing that part of their job. But before we get into it, right, you get the same question everyone gets at the beginning. So from your perspective, Kasia, what do you feel makes a high performing recruitment team?
What maybe drives me, and I hope more talent acquisition managers are, is basically the four things, I think, like empathy, curiosity, passion, and kindness. Those can go a long way, even though they might sound pretty basic. But talent acquisition in general, I'm always saying it's not very rocket science. Like anyone can do it, but not anyone can do it well. So I think like if you have those four qualities in a way in you that can help you shape not only the best recruitment processes, but also just care about the kind of experience along every step, because that's something that I'm feeling deeply passionate about. And also the interview training, of course, covers that topic, but not only. So if you're in generally having an empathy and think about like a candidate, you will always make sure that you communicate clearly on the way, you make your candidates make well-informed decision, and basically also you help your team and interviewers, hiring managers to do the same. So the interview and training kind of puts it all together, and I think those four things can be like a basics for me at least.
It's four pillars of the team, right? So if you can hire people that emulate those four core kind of traits, then, as you say, from your perspective, that will help build out a high performing recruitment team over time.
Absolutely.
Okay. So interviewing, right? Let's get into the nuts and bolts of what it is. Before we kind of talk about your journey and how we got there and the team and what we're doing today, let's peel it back to the very kind of core concept of interviewing. What is the actual goal that we're trying to achieve with interviews?
So to be honest, I always think to be as human as possible in every single way, acknowledging kind of that the interviewing can be a stressful scenario, that we are all different, and it's a skill that some people really master. So we have many cases where someone just nailed the interview process, and then after joining the company, did not pass the probation or just did not showcase the skills that maybe were shown in the recruitment process. So it's really, from my perspective, very important to remember that and build kind of the interview process based on that as well. So maybe avoiding snap judgments and giving the candidates still a possibility to alternate on the feedback, like give the feedback while interviewing, ask following up questions, not assuming things right away. Maybe if they, I don't know, use the word, we did it as a team, don't assume that they haven't really contributed in a certain projects, but ask them, okay, what have you done as an individual contributor? Like, what did you learn along the way? So really learning the skill of digging deeper beyond the surface in the interview, I think it's very, very important. And yeah, treating candidates basically like your potential client, or a person that can refer you further, a great candidate, because great people know great people. And sometimes a candidate can be not a fit for your company, for your role, but it doesn't mean that they are, I don't know, not senior enough or they don't have the expertise. It's just that certain companies are looking for very specific sort of requirements. But then if they had a great interview, if they have a great experience, they will talk with others and they might really talk about your company. So it's always like in every way to kind of think like a candidate and make sure that you treat them as as a potential client, but also as like, hey, how would like to be treated? So that's something that I've always deeply care and want to also insert in people's mindset in the interview training, like this flipping the coin or the empathy part. But I'm definitely going to talk about it more later.
So the core element of to go through a process of interviewing, of course we want to hire someone, don't get me wrong, right? We'll want to get the person, but it's not just the hire that's the goal. It's the whole process. It's the journey the person's going to go through. It's making sure that we're representing the company, representing ourselves, representing the team in the very best possible way. That's reading between what you're sharing there. That's the goal of what we're trying to do. The outcome, of course, we would like the hire at the end, but if it doesn't happen, if we nail everything else, the interview process was still successful in that regard.
Absolutely. We're also building the network while interviewing, while doing so. Like I do have a lot of contacts still with people I did not end up hiring, but then like we still refer, either I refer the person in my network of recruiters because I know there are some open roles, or they write to me like, hey, actually I have a colleague that might be also fitting for your role. And it happens all the time. So obviously the goal is to hire the most suitable candidate for your company, based on the skills, the requirements, and of course the so-called cultural fit or the fit to the values. But if there are also other things that you're working on, like the employer brand as well, you want to perceive yourself, or you want to like showcase also the candidate how great as a company you are, but also how deeply you care about the long-lasting relationship. So that's also something I wanted to put emphasis on while interviewing. Like, okay, if we think the candidate's not a fit, maybe not just like disregard this straight away, but like let's still get to know the person. Let's still make sure that they have the good experience. They really like gave us their time, and this is only just fair to give it back, which also means giving them feedback afterwards, not having any radio silence. Just treat every individual, every candidate, regardless of if you're going to hire or not, but as kind of like a same importance. That's something that I always strive to do.
I think that's why I think the reason why I love the training topic so much is that where the market is today. So we're filming this mid-June. By the time it goes live, it may be a couple of months from now, right? But I'm definitely seeing it from my perspective in the market that it's getting harder, right? Talent is no longer readily available. Yes, there is a lot of talent out there, and the question could come up, can companies change criteria? But by and large, the businesses I work with aren't changing their criteria. They want to stay firm. We want ... right? And fair enough, that they're allowed to do that. But I'm definitely seeing that the employer brand, the how you treat people, this is becoming so important, more so now, because you can't just think, okay, next month 5 more companies going to make layoffs, and we can all run to the talent there, and we're back to what it was pre-COVID, I think, trying to find talent on the market. But you've got far less opportunities for people in general, so you really have to sell, you really have to make sure that everyone is going through the process, and it's the white glove service, right? So for you and your team, right, this Upvest, how did the topic of training come up in general?
Yeah, so last year we were a very small team, basically just me and my colleague who was also kind of like an external recruiter. And Upvest was is really growing, and we secure actually investment Series C round towards the end of last year. And
Very
sort of
nice.
with our ambitious plans to grow, we looked at the hires, and we realized, okay, we're going to add at least 100 new Upvengers. The company at that point had around 180 people. So then it's a significant growth. And we definitely do not want to compromise on quality. And of course, many companies say that, but we do have like a set of 4 values that shape the way we work and our culture. And just in general, our management really cares about who is going to join our company. They basically came up with a set of like 10 hiring principles to guide us, not only talent acquisition, but everyone involved in the process to hire better, faster, and with greater confidence, and hire so-called hell yes candidates. So basically candidates who are bar raisers, who will have an impact on our success. And of course we were like, okay, what does that mean to be a hell yes candidate? Like, how do we know how everyone can be aligned on what are we looking for? Like, we do not compromise on this quality, but also we need to look at ourselves. Like, how do we actually interview? If we want to hire the best, we need to also raise the bar for ourselves. And like I said, look beyond the surface. So a couple of questions came into the mix, and also just because the team was so small, many hiring managers and teams were doing hiring themselves. And obviously, with not having enough time, maybe communication sometimes wasn't the best of the candidates, not always on time. The feedback wasn't always delivered. So even though we've always had a great feedback from candidates also on Glassdoor, but then we want to now, with the speed and with the amount of people, we want to keep it and make sure that we are equipped and our interviewers are equipped with this tools and knowledge on how to do it in a better, bigger scale. So then that became one of our OKRs in the team. I did already interview training in 2 other companies, and this is something I'm very passionate about. So I was really gladly jumping on board. And together with my colleague, Johanna, who is our head of learning and development, we sort of, based on the hiring principles, created first a facilitation guide when we thought, okay, what are the goals for this workshop? Like, how do we want to do it? We created certain sections that, again, were linked to hiring principles, but also we thought, what kind of activities we can add to it? We want to have it really as workshops and not just me reading slides and telling people what to do. So we also wanted, of course, to have it prepared for different scenarios. So we are hybrid in a way. We're very flexible, but people sometimes come to the office, sometimes are remote. So we had a set of 3 workshops that were kind of ready to be led in a hybrid scenario, but also completely remote. So that came from that need of hiring very quality candidates. And then we did it in 2 months, I'll say. I created content. Johanna helped me kind of put it like in a facilitation, like learning development steps, like how to make sure that participants really learn something out of this, and also what kind of activity can really engage them. And then, we sort of worked on it. I created content and then led the 3 workshops from beginning of March until the end of or mid-April. And it's not going to be the end. So we've done 3 workshops, 90 minutes each. Around 64% of all Avengers, as we call ourselves, participated in the training. So every session was around 40 people. And then, of course, once we hire more people, those people will also join our interviewer pool. So there are some plans to roll out the trainings again in another quarter. But for now, we did 3 sessions. And yeah, I'm very excited to share some key takeaways as well.
Nice. And I think that the situation you're in, I commend it massively, because you're growing, you're hiring, you've got these principles from management, right? We take them, but you're only 2 people on the internal team. I mean, it might have changed now, but at that point you're 2 people. So like, to take on this huge topic and go, okay, no, we need to set the standard to get to that goal. We need to take it back and do this. I think that's the part a lot of people miss. They go, okay, cool, we're hiring 100, let's just go at it, and then it becomes, well, a mess, right? Communication problems, feedback, as you shared as well. So you kind of taken it back. So my biggest gripe with training is typically it typically ends with, as you've said, someone reading from slides. It's not very interactive. People don't really pay attention as much as they probably should, and more senior members, right? Sorry to any senior members who are listening, but I think that's probably the biggest frustration that I've had when I've tried to speak to someone. It's like, no, I've done it. I've been hiring for 10 years. Like, great, but like, we're going this way. We need the whole company to go this way. So break it down for us. You had these 3 training sessions. You said there was interactivity elements. Tell me a little bit about not, I mean, you haven't got to go into too much detail about every single one, but how were the sessions broken down? What was you trying to cover? And then how did you bring along the seniors um, for that journey to get them excited? And that they come out of that meeting, they know, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then last one, because I apologize, I'm throwing 4 questions at you here. How do you hold them accountable?
Mhm. So maybe starting with the end, but I think the fact that it came from our management, that it
Yeah.
was literally a part of the OKRs for our quarter. We're like, we got this investment round, we know what we're doing, we have ambitious plans, we're growing, but that means that we need a team that will help us get there. And we had, of course, like every 2 weeks, we have company presentations. Either we walk through our OKRs, or just company information. And in pretty much every single one, our management was mentioning the hiring, how important it is, and how much we really, really all need to treat it as a priority. So I
Right.
think the management or senior hires were not hires, senior people in our company were already on board in a way. Everyone had a sort of understanding that that works this way, which is completely different from my previous companies where the TA were the drivers of running the interview training. And, we popped out in the Slack message like, hey, we're doing the interview training, just sign up if you want to, or like, if you're hiring, sign up, and just we encourage the rest. But here it was literally like, okay, everyone in the company, or especially the management, really, really knew or wanted this to happen. And sort of like this excitement, this idea of how important it is was already kind of established. Plus,
Okay.
people already did their hiring themselves. Like I said, that the TA team I joined in September. Before there were 2 recruiters, I joined, and in the end we were also 2. So, and many people, many hiring managers were already doing it, sometimes struggling. So they did have already some sort of basic understanding, but it was like, okay, how do we do it now? How do we make sure we hire those hell yes candidates, and what does that mean? So this kind of buy-in was already there, and I've noticed, because of course after every session we saw also who participated, and it was a mix of really seniority, and we've noticed also some very senior people just joining those sessions, which was amazing, and really appreciating that. So basically, how we did it, or how I of course gathered some basics of interviewing that needs to happen, but I didn't want to go too much into those, but also just make it interactive. And my initial thought process basically of designing this interview started with the empathy. So I like to, like I mentioned before, flip the coin to gather the necessary perspective, because I think that in Berlin, at least, everyone in my network at some or constantly is looking for a new job or interviewing for a certain company or
It feels
changing.
like it.
So this, yes, really, and so this topic is kind of always there, and so everyone is talking about, I don't know, applications, frustrations, not hearing back from recruiters, interviewers not being engaged. So sort of everyone has an idea of how the process should look like, but
Hmm.
very often we forget about it once we are on the other side. And our training basically started with a question. We came, of course, like we set the scene, introduced ourselves, and we asked the participants, like, can you recall the best interview process you've experienced so far? What were some of the things, big and small, that made you feel like it was a great kind of experience? Would you recommend a company that basically had give you this great experience? Or what was also maybe what did not go so well? We all had probably like a nightmare processes when maybe really we were like, oh, we just wasted our time. So we kind of let the participants at the beginning tell us what the good
Hmm.
candidate experience looked like. And of course, I was also having some of the anecdotes and some of the things I gathered throughout all the years, but we kind of like came up with this all together. But this started the whole training. So, okay, the candidate experience, but coming from our participants. And then also, it also came the same with the section, for example, about the feedback, because again, we're thinking of candidates as our potential clients. Even if we don't end up hiring them, my view or my team's view is always to give the candidates the feedback. But we, of course, work with what we have from the interviewers. So again, we ask the participants, like, can you reflect on your own experience as a candidate again? Did you always receive feedback of an interview? Was it helpful, or how would you have wanted to be evaluated?
Hmm.
Because actually, I cannot I cannot mention how many times I just get the one-liner, oh, the candidate's not, it's too junior for the role.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Or sometimes I had teams, not at Upvest, but previously, where maybe there were some comments related to candidates' appearance or things that were completely not related. So
Irrelevant. Yeah.
always, yes, flipping the coin. Like, if you would read this feedback as a candidate or as yourself being in the process, would you think it was fair? Would you think that was a fair evaluation? So we gave them, and of course, starting with this, then comes a little bit more tips. Like, of course, make notes, inform the candidate that you do so, like a basics. I still have candidates sometimes coming to me like, oh, the interviewers were not looking at the camera, they were typing the whole time. And I was like, oh, maybe they made the note, even though we should know this since we do remote interviewing since COVID, but maybe it's also just good to mention this to the candidate at the very beginning. And then just to give also our participants like a skeleton of how the good feedback can look like, so they can maybe be inspired a little bit how to do it afterwards. But basically also, if you have an opinion, back it up with specific example. Don't make blanket statements without adding some explanation. That doesn't help neither
Yeah.
hiring manager to make a decision nor recruiters to give the feedback further to the candidate, because we want to make sure that, especially after second step, which is like hiring manager interview or technical or workshops, to be able to give this candidate a feedback. So that's kind of like started with this empathy, and then we're thinking like, okay, when can we actually put this? So this really created great discussion in those workshops, because people like to share their experiences, and this is what kind of like connects us all. We've all been through processes. We've all we got it Upfest, so you've also been into this process. Maybe we can share like how was it for you and how you can improve it. So yeah, that was kind of like the beginning, and of course then we looked into, okay, what else is important for us. So what does that mean, the hell yes candidate, which comes very much often. So we kind of started by defining it, and this is basically someone that not only excels in the role, which means fulfilling the must-have criteria, and we agreed that we've always had 3-4 must-have criteria for every single role. We do the scorecards, we know what we are assessing, and we're not moving forward with the candidates if they're not fulfilling those requirements. There are, of course, more that are like great to have pluses, but we always focus on the 3-4 that are like must-haves. And the hell yes candidate not only fulfill that, but also aligns with our mission, is interested at Upvest, is curious about our company, adds to our culture, shares the values that we have, and also raises our already high standards. So that is a candidate that receives basically like the feedback that it's for everyone that we want to hire, the confidence of hiring this candidate. So we were also like how to make people confident that the candidate is a good fit. So we also touched upon the scorecards, the idea of scorecards, the structured interview, the competency-based interviewing, because I think with the AI currently, it's not so important like what kind of questions you're going to ask. You can always ask any kind of AI tool like, oh, I need to assess this skill, what sort of question I can ask. But to learn sort of that this is a conversation, you can always ask follow-up questions. Don't like make this snap judgment. If you're not sure about something, just ask again, oh, did I understand it correctly? Or maybe, if the candidate didn't give you well-rounded answer based on STAR framework, which we also touched upon, then just ask follow-up questions. Because again, interviewing is a skill. Some very experienced interviewers would give you very well-rounded answer, right? What was the scenario? What was this? What was the task? What was the outcome of the things I've done? What was the learnings? But doesn't always happen. So you as interviewer has to have this responsibility to kind of ask the follow-up questions to really dig deeper into those must-have skills. And we've kind of circled back again, what does that mean, the competency-based interviewing? And we want to kind of predict the future behavior based on how candidates use certain skills in their experience. But not only that, but also what they've learned, what they reflected upon, like how would they do things differently knowing what they know now. And so that was the kind of like couple of things we thought as must-have, so to say, for the interview training, but also the whole section of how do we elevate our game as interviewers.
Okay, a lot to unpack. Let me peel it back. I love the fact that the buy-in was quite easy. Then, for the sounds of it, we've got leadership driving it, making it visible to the company, and the bi-weeklies, And having it as an OKR, I think, is a really good topic because you can't get away from it then. Everyone is driving towards it. And I think from that, that's probably why you got quite a nice buy-in from senior management as well. And then when people see senior managers are doing it, I've definitely done it in the past. Someone steps up to do something, you're like, oh, maybe we should do that as well. And then it kind of creates this ripple effect. So I think that's a really good takeaway for someone thinking, okay, how do I get my stakeholders to buy into my training that I'm trying to conduct, what we want to conduct? I think you need to get some key figures at the top to kind of really drive it with you. The the element of the training, so you flip the coin, flip the script, as you say. So that's taking, instead of you saying, okay, this is why we should do it, this is why it's important. We all want to kind of have a nice process. You're getting your stakeholders or whoever's doing the interview training to say, okay, this is what I liked, and then someone would say, actually, I like this, and then you're kind of molding it all together, like this melting pot of what a good process and a bad process looks like, and then seeing what our process looks like, and then kind of getting them around to the idea of, okay, well, that's what I liked about processes before, and maybe we should emulate that sort of stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that was the point about like this kind of experience, which was really, really aligning. Like we all kind of know how we want to be treated, or
Yeah.
very similarly so. But then of course we were like, okay, this is our interview process for certain roles. This is just again a reminder, what are we assessing in certain steps, so then everyone kind of has a bit of an understanding that okay, TA already covers the basics, but like okay, in every step you are responsible for this kind of experience. So it's not just TA. So we kind of have this melting pot of ideas, but sort of also it always fits to whatever I wanted to say, basically, because again, there was a quite of a basics, but important basics that sometimes are overlooked. Like, I don't know, be prepared. If you're late 5 minutes, mention that I'm sorry, I was having a meeting. Take some notes, or like basically present the company, which I'm also gonna maybe mention later how much we wanted to sell the company without selling, but that's gonna come later. But like, be aware of your own biases as well. So we did have this discussion beforehand, and then when we discussed the kind of experience, we sort of like, okay, now let's look at Upvest, how we do the interview process. So those are the steps. What is the purpose of certain steps? Like, also for the interviewers, like for them to understand maybe how do we define the must-have skills. So I kind of show them like a job description. That's the job description that the hiring manager and team basically you created. And then I sit with the hiring manager during the kickoff meeting. And then we kind of see, okay, what are the 3-4 crucial must-have skills from it? And then I put it in the feedback form. And then when you have the team joining, for example, workshops or certain steps on the interview process, like you either tell the interviewers that, okay, you assess this skill, or those are the 4 skills you need to assess. So then we kind of show them also, okay, how is it like structurally, how does that work? And then probably some teams haven't had it yet, because we in our team at that point we had new recruiters, they were still like being onboarded, and then every recruiter got a certain department. So now the teams don't have to do recruitment themselves, so we are driving it. So it was sort of like, however you've done interviewing before, great, thank you for doing that. Now we are here to help you, and this is basically the structure way of us making sure we are aligned on what we are looking for, and that you come to the interview step knowing what you're assessing, and then also helps you in the feedback afterwards. And we did talk also a lot about, like, I don't know, the communication, that the transparency with the candidates. So we need your feedback, we need your buy-in. If you're busy maybe after the interview, and obviously you cannot write the feedback right away, just text the recruiter if it's thumbs up, thumbs down, so I know if I can already go and schedule the candidate for the next step. And so
that helps just keep the process moving, even though someone might not be available straight away. You can just say thumbs up, let's go, next step, then we'll gather feedback at a later date.
Yes, but I'm thinking that for everyone to sort of agree into those things, it needs to come also from within a little bit. So you need to understand why those things are happening. Why do we need you to like be very like objective into the feedback? Because as a candidate, like you wouldn't like to read that feedback maybe that has nothing to do with the requirements of the job, let's say. So in order for everyone to have this buy-in on how we do certain things, I kind of want everyone to understand from their own perspective why those things are important. So that's why it was sort of like a mix of this discussions of your experience, and here, okay, this is like the framework, this is how we do it. competency-based interviewing, maybe not always have an open questions about, there also, it's a mix of open questions, of course, but like you have requirements you're looking for, you want to see how those candidates apply those skills, because of course people can mention a lot of things, how they think or how they would do certain things, but actually how did you apply it? So you as an interviewer need to be prepared how to assess this, or if you're not sure yet, you can still ask follow-up questions, like, and not afterwards, because we in feedback we have this score from 1 to 4, where 1 is a strong no, 2 is a no, 3 is a yes, 4 is a hell yes. So we don't have maybe. And before, maybe it was easier to say, oh, I'm not sure, but like we want to make sure that you are equipped in tools, questions, or basically like must have criteria that you would be at least having confidence to say if it's a yes or it's a no. Ideally, hell yes, of course.
You said about elevating the interviewers towards the end. You said like you want to make sure that everyone's kind of raising that standard, raising the bar. And I guess how do you elevate your interviewing panel, like your interviewing stakeholders? Because again, coming back to the example where you might have someone who's interviewed for 10 plus years, hired hundreds of people, they're going to be one level, and then you've got someone who's maybe just started, obviously different levels. So how do we get everyone on the same, not on the same page, but on the same standard, right? Where we're trying to remove the biases, where we're trying to get them to, interview subjectively. So yeah, I mean, how do you go through about that process of creating that elevation?
Yeah, so of course it starts with everybody. So we talked about our biases, checking our biases. We also talk about our interviewers' pitfalls. So not only candidates' red flags, but also us as interviewers. What are the things that maybe we fall into? Example, like during the workshop, like we have the challenge or case study or workshop, however you want to call it, where like maybe if the candidate struggles, do you instantly think like, okay, that's maybe not a fit, or do you actually help out? Like, for example, in the work scenario, if your colleague struggles, obviously you're going to help. Like you want to also see like how candidate approaches the feedback, like how do they alternate certain options. So would you already quickly make a judgment that the candidate actually struggles, is maybe not a fit? Or maybe they say one sentence at the beginning that reminded you, or maybe a colleague that you didn't like working with, and you instantly have this sort of a bias. So we talked a lot about our interview pitfalls. We put them together. We talked about candidates' red flag and how we can still flip it, or is there a possibility that we can challenge their behavior and still wait until the end of the interview to make our decision? And again, acknowledging that this is a stressful scenario, and it can be more stressful than for others, can be more stressful than for the others. So basically we were talking also about like how we can change those little behaviors, and we were sharing our examples. For example, like I, as an interviewer, I'm very much aware that if I have a candidate that comes from my country, Poland, I'm instantly a bit more friendlier, or maybe I'm just so excited because I would love to have another Polish person in the team. But then like it doesn't really matter. But like I know it while going into the interview. I'm always like, okay, I'm
Consciously
gonna be
aware of
probably
it.
speaking a bit Polish. Yes, and we also did an unconscious bias training, which was outside of interview training for all the company, and it was led by not one person but everyone in departments. We have like a DIB community, and every person was doing the unconscious bias training also in their own department. So first we did interview training, then we actually tackled that topic as well. But here we started with it. When I'm heard it many times, very often heard sentence from hiring manager like, oh, do you remember Mark who left, I don't know, a month ago, and he was in this position? Like, we want someone like Mark. Can you hire us another Mark? And then,
I've
okay,
definitely had that before. You make a hire, can we just
exactly.
hire Eden number 2? Like it doesn't work like that. There's only one
Yeah, and
Eden.
Mark was exactly, and Mark has been in the company for quite some time. Like Mark already had a domain knowledge that comes from being at Upvest, and probably he was not very well-rounded, perfect fit for in the very beginning of the interview process. So let's pinpoint what actually made Mark such a great fit. Like again, coming down to the must-have skills.
I was about to say, so that's leading into the must-haves. And sorry to jump in, when you talk about must-haves, are you looking at the hard skills? Let's talk about, because I think you guys run on Golang from memory, say like they have to have built back-end Golang architecture as a must-have, or we talk about must-haves are more of the softer skills? Because again, the reason I asked is that a lot of times I'm in the camp that a lot of hard skills can be taught and learned, but I mean, I'm just curious to kind of when you're looking at your must-haves, where do you normally gravitate towards?
Yeah, it's a mix, to be honest. For example, when it comes to our engineering department, like one of the must-have skills is also, or skills, or maybe quality. I'm saying skills, but basically it's a scorecard afterwards. But it's like a product mindset.
Mhm.
So our engineers really need to have this curiosity about product and collaboration with product on a very often basis. Like thinking the problem space before jumping into solution space. Always having why. Why do I build certain things? How does it have an impact on something? So it depends on the role, but it's a mix. It's not always like 100% a hard skills. Like let's say when we were looking for anti-money laundering manager, except for having the anti-money laundering operations experience, but also communication and collaboration, because they will talk with very very senior stakeholders or also like regulators. So it's not always hard skills. It's
Fair enough.
also the soft ones that we really need. And this product curiosity, but also those four must-have skills are, let's say, for the beginning of the process, like hiring manager, then there might be a bit different for the workshop. And then every process at Upvest has a final call, which is a values call. And this is usually led by department heads or and it's about our values when we also it's very important for us. So then we've already like nailed the must-have criteria, which probably most of them might be hard, but also soft skills, like maybe one or two. And in the end, we have our values where we like check if the values like learn and grow, team first, own the outcome, tell the story, things that are very important for us are also aligning with the candidate. But yeah, like it was also interesting because we were tackling some stories. I was bringing like the examples on candidates' behavior and
Mhm.
how those can still be challenged. So we talked, for example, when the candidate is talking and talking about not important or not answering the question or giving you a lot of side
Roundabout.
stories and
Yeah.
about like just having like this stream of consciousness and doesn't stop much, and it includes a lot of irrelevant information, avoiding answering the question. Would you already like think that okay, maybe they don't have experience in it, or actually okay, when is that a red flag? And then we were okay sort of discussing okay, we can kind of admit or stop the candidate in a way, or afterwards admit that, oh, we're not really sure what you mean, or try to phrase what you understand from their answer and ask them if that's correct, or ask follow-up questions, or ask them basically the same question and ask for more details correctly. And if they still seems to be unwilling or or unable to answer, that maybe it's a red flag. But maybe that was just the first reaction for stress, which happens to me as well. When I'm stressed, I'm just going to talk a lot and faster, and maybe completely forgetting the actual question in the beginning. And of course, again, the more interviews you're doing, the easier it gets. But sometimes, yes, so some candidates just been in the company for many years, and this might be a first interview they have in like
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. So that
I think
was
that
really like we brought those scenarios.
so that whole element of having your interviewers think and put themselves back in that position, change the perception of what they're looking at from the interview perspective. I think that's so powerful, and I think that helps drive the rest of the conversations you're having with them, because again, they can sit back and go, okay, as you say, like follow-up questions and things like that. Like, what was I doing in that position when I have interviewed at Upvest or another company? How did I respond? Because you've hit the nail on the head. Some people are brilliant at interviews, and
Yeah.
others less so, but it doesn't make them necessarily less than adequate to do the job. We as talent professionals and as interviewers need to probe deeper. We might need to work a little bit harder for a few people, but those people could be the gems that everyone else is ignoring because we've taken that little bit of time to spend with them. You mentioned selling the company
100%.
without selling the company. I love this, by the way, and I'm a big fan. I don't think teams do this enough. And I think in this, again, coming back to what I said at the beginning, where the market shifted, I think it's so important for us to be doing this now. For the last 3 years, you could get away. Most people sit there being laid off and go, I need a job. Whereas now we're in a position where people, they might not necessarily need the jobs. We have to convince them that they need our job, and we want, it's a mutual benefit. So how do you sell the company without selling the company?
Yes, I also have always a problem with the word selling, but it is a little bit in talent acquisition. But
Oh, we
I
are
always think that
salespeople. I had
selling,
this chat yesterday. I'll have to
I
stress it.
know,
We are salespeople. Anyone who says
um,
they're not in talent acquisition, I, we sell. We sell the company and
we
we
do.
sell talent to our hiring managers. That is, yeah, I'm very firm on that one.
True.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I was always flipping it. Okay, it's just presenting, but it's actually, yeah, it is. For me, the selling and recruiting is all about getting people to make the most informed decisions. So
100%.
I want them to have I want them to have all those information along the way, but it doesn't stop with a recruiter. And we do have the very similar pitch for every candidate, but then there are different roles, different seniorities. So it is very important that in every step along the way, the interviewers can actually sell by telling their stories, because obviously it might create sort of like a bit of a wall when people hear that. Oh, I'm gonna sell it, like not a chance. But it's not about that. It's basically when you introduce yourself, like how about just telling a little bit more about what you're working on. So at Upvest, we are a very performance driven company. We have OKRs. Every quarter we work on something exciting. So in this section of our interview training, when we were talking about the selling or presenting Upvest, I asked the participants to basically take a moment to reflect on what you like about working at Upvest,
Hmm.
about like your journey, your current project, like what are you excited about, like how those projects helped you grow, basically, and just form for yourself 1-2 sentences and add it to your intro. Instead of just saying, I'm Kasia, I'm a senior talent acquisition manager, and that's it.
Yeah.
Mention maybe like if I'm hiring recruiters, I would definitely mention, hey, I'm actually working now on the interview training because we are having hiring principles. We don't want to compensate on quality, and we have a great buy-in from the management, and it gives me already an indication as a talent acquisition that I want to work for this company, because interview training and kind of experience is important for that company. As a recruiter, I want to know that, and especially that candidates are, they want to hear from their peers, from their future manager, what they would like to, what they will learn, what kind of opportunities they will have by already hearing someone else's story. And this will give us such a big competitive advantage already moving forward, because when they will be presented with a couple of offers, and we do again want to hire the best and people in our niche, because we are most of the time looking for people in the fintech or maybe also investment experience. So they will be presented with a couple of offers, and then we want them to have all the information necessary. Of course, we always can offer more calls and more, but they already don't have to like hesitate too much,
Yeah.
because in every step from other stakeholders, they've already found out about the learning opportunities, about the projects that teams are working, like what people like working at Upvest. I'm getting these questions a lot, but I'm a recruiter. I'm not necessarily going to have the same experience as you if you're joining as an engineer, or if you're joining as a analytical and anti-money laundering specialist. So this is basically important for me, is important for me to insert in everyone, that this is kind of your responsibility in a way to just present your story. And like, you're here because you probably like it.
It's
You're
those
here for a
stories that
reason.
influence. That's the part. And
Yeah.
I agree we should be able to give them informed decisions. You can subtly sell throughout the conversation by playing on the things that are important to them. Obviously, that's what we do as recruiters, right? You find out what's important, and then you might say to someone who's interviewing them next, say, by the way, they're driven by learn development. Or you might get an interviewer who's also driven by learn development, and then they'll have a natural conversation. That's the subtle influence that you're going to have. I also know, as you was talking about this now, maybe you do this, maybe you don't do this. I don't know. We'll find out. This might go down like a lead balloon. If you're rolling this training out over time, right, and I imagine you'll probably end up doing follow-ups, right, because we're still quite early on. I think you could probably detect levers in your team earlier. And the reason I say this, so when someone talks about the company and their journey and what they're excited about, you did it yourself, right? When you started to do it, I watched you naturally. You sit up a little bit taller, you get a little bit more animated, you get a little bit more excited, right? And it's
Yeah.
natural. But if you're doing a follow-up training session and someone seemed a little bit switched off, maybe obviously there's something happening, personal life, maybe at work or whatever, but I think you could probably use that as a little subtle tell. Are they disengaging with Upvest as a company? And then that could be, I mean, again, I know it might seem like we're switching interview training to understand what's happened, but I think in theory, embedding that into your training, just being so aware of the subtle cues people are doing, that might help your retention further. Again, I'm a little bit off topic, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, but great idea. Actually, the managers as well, hiring managers, when they involve their teammates to do the interview training, they could do this little exercise,
yeah,
basically, like, okay, hey, let's sit down, let's write those 2, 3 sentences about our journey at Upvest, and it's kind of can give also a manager already an indicator, like, oh, okay, this person couldn't find actually anything they liked about
precisely.
it,
It might
which
be
can
nothing.
already help to,
It might be
yeah.
nothing, but it might lead to something. You can start seeing, are they disengaging with us? Do we need to put a little bit more attention to that person? Why? And it just helps the whole process, because you're absolutely right. Loads of people interviewing, and they interview not
Yeah.
necessarily to find a job. They just might keep tabs on the market, but at least managers, talent acquisition professionals can then look internally to their own team and say, okay, is there flight risks that we have based on performance, based on disengagement, based on whatever, right? And then you can start planning around workforce that way by using interview training. Kasia,
Absolutely. And also one just one more thing, just because also that's this part is so important as well, because we do source a lot of candidates, so we do really look for candidates, not only apply but also we and want to engage candidates maybe that are not looking for a job at that moment. And then this is like a crucial, how do we get them
yeah,
excited? So because we want to have a mix of pool of candidates that are applying but also that are in the market not looking for anything, but yeah, casually
open to a
just
chat.
checking. So
Open to a chat.
open to a
My
chat,
my question
exactly.
behind that though, every time it happens, say for example, you say I'm just open for a chat. It's like, if you've got an updated CV and you're willing to speak to a recruiter, there is something, whatever it is, there is something that you're trying to change.
Yes.
What is that one thing?
Mm-hmm.
Then they tell me, and like, I can match it or I can't match it, and then you work that way.
Yeah.
Because even if you're not active, you have an updated CV, you're willing to speak to a recruiter, you're active, you're open.
Yeah.
Let's say it that way. Kasia, I really
100%.
appreciate you being very transparent
Mm-hmm.
about this. It's a lot of information for someone to hopefully have a notepad and pen and really start crafting their own interview training with it. But I'm curious to see how this goes. So I would very much like to keep tabs with you on it, and then maybe do a follow up in a couple of months' time, because I know obviously you rolled this out, and then let's see what the results look like and any learns that come from it as well, because I think that'll be very interesting to actually experience, firsthand. This is the good, the bad, the ugly, and now what we're doing and going to roll into, towards the end of 25. But if someone wants to, connect with you, learn from you a bit further, where's the best place that they can find you?
Absolutely. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. We already started to measure certain things. Again, um, we just finished it in April, so now we're recording at the beginning of June. But already, like we've started to measure our candidate ENPS score, which is at this point from May and no, actually 1 month. So from May to June was already plus 38, which is above the average. Like generally consider a good score is plus 20 or higher, so plus 38 is great, but we already want, of course, aim higher. After every interview feedback, I'm also asking candidates about their feedback. We've only had like 2 people not passing the probation in 1 quarter, when we have at least 12 hires per month. So also we, of course, send the survey for our participants, and already 90 or 71 mentioned very likely they will apply what they've learned. The rest mentioned they probably will do so. They mentioned a couple of things, or our participants, what they would take with them. And it's amazing to see that. And of course, we will keep on measuring. We also recently changed our ATS to one that will help us measure the quality of hire better. So absolutely, I'm probably going to share many learnings on my LinkedIn profile as well. But yeah, Kasia Zadlo. Zadlo is a more German pronunciation, I guess. I'm not gonna even say how it's pronounced in Polish, because it's missing 3 crazy Polish letters. But you're probably gonna link me somewhere. So please connect with me. I'm very passionate about interview training, and happy to hear how other people, how other recruiters, how other companies are doing it. Because yeah, I think it's very, very important, and it's really sparkled great conversation in our teams as well.
Fantastic. And like I say, I really, really do appreciate it. It's great to hear that you're already seeing success off the back of it. That's such a good indicator that what we're doing internally is working. And that's kudos to you and to your team for doing it. So thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to hearing more. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.